Right, Nigel, you've been red carded from the North Lake. Been there, done it, as you did. Next step was...
Well, the one lake left on the Big Fish side of the road, which is the Pads Lake.
Okay, so let's just go for a little bit about the Pads Lake itself. I think we've got an image on the screen as we do with the other videos there. So, size of the lake and build up?
Oh, I would imagine the size of it's probably about 4 acres, I would say. Couldn't say exactly, but it's not a very big lake. Sort of almost square in shape. Named because of 2 big lily beds in there, like huge lily beds up the top end. Well, what you see on the map there, between the pads pole position, they sort of, the pads are, the 2 lily beds are in that area, and the shallow bars up that end as well. Lily pads obviously grow well in shallow water, don't they? But yeah, there's like a, I don't know, you'd call it like the bars all run down the lake sort of from right to left, and as they went down they broke up a bit more and it got deeper towards Grebeshead Bay on the left hand side there. It wasn't really that deep a lake, probably 6-7 foot at its maximum.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really a lot to it other than the lily beds and these bars. A few little snags around the lake, like off the margins, but nothing too like huge. There was no real huge like holding snags, deep water under them or anything. So it was, a lot of the focus was around the lily pads. Like
was that mainly where they sort of just grouped up and hung around in pads?
Obviously, that first swim up what they called the Carp bank at Yateley between the car park and the Pads Lake, there's a swim called pole position. It's basically fished up to the back of a main set of pads over the bars that run out from a little point to the left of the swim. So that was a swim everyone wanted to get in, and if you can see next to it there's a swim called Waiting Man's. Quite often people would set up in there waiting to get into pole position when whoever was in there would leave. So, but yeah, they were, back in the day, Pads Lake was a very gin clear, weedy water, but I think in time the bream had sort of overpopulated the lake and coloured it up, and the weed had sort of struggled for getting light, so it became a bit barren really. So it was literally, there wasn't a lot to it really. The fish could sort of swim around the lake quite freely. There wasn't a lot to camouflage your rigs other than the clarity of the water, which was getting worse and worse by the time I got on there. So it'll sort of take all these things into account. The carp, well, stock wise, I'll probably jump the gun here and answering a question before you've asked it.
Yeah, no, go far away.
There was 5 carp in there. One of them had died, so this left 4 carp when I went on there. So it's fish an acre basically, low stock, small family of fish. I think there's a couple of 30s, the big and jumbo that could do 40 and a 20 pounder. So
it wasn't like the big fish, the 40s that you've had in the previous lakes that you fished, like the North Lake, things like that. But they was hard to catch prize fish, basically.
Yeah, I mean they were the same stock, same strain of fish, which was mainly in the car park lake. Like your half tails and all that. Like they're ex-match lake fish. They'd taken their little journey across the road back in the day while people moving them about. But yeah, very small stock of fish. I mean, there was a few stockies put in there, like small mirrors, but we didn't really look upon them as what you was fishing for. You was after one of the 4, mainly the big and jumbo. So, but having caught what I'd caught out at Car Park Lake, which we mentioned a couple of other episodes ago, North Lake, the last sort of bit we did, I didn't really have any choice really. That was it.
Red
Went on there, caught 440s from Yateley, which was epic to me, that I mentioned last time, and this one, the late record's 43 pound or something jumbo. I think Peter Painter, an old mate of mine, still see him today, fish with him over Frimley now and again, but he held the Pad Lake record, so there's a chance it could be a 40 pounder. A few people had it at 40, but I was going to see if I could get that 50, 80, 40. Didn't know really, it didn't matter. It was, you fish for the big one in the lake and that's it. With them lesser stock lakes like the Pad Lake and the North Lake, it's about one fish, you catch it, you're off, which basically I only caught 2 carp out of North Lake, Little Common and Basil. So red card, there's no point carrying your gear up there for a 32 pounder, the snake or something, Plus the red card thing, you respect others. There was a cheap ticket, you could move around the complex on that cheap ticket. There was people travelling down from up north, like north of Liverpool, all over the country, from Kent, Devon,
was this all
Cornwall.
really due, like I say, because obviously you'd done well in the previous seasons, and not just yourself, but you got Mailing on there, you got Terry on there. So were the lakes just through the press just starting to get very busy by now?
Yeah, they'd got busier and busier. I mean, they was always known. It wasn't like it was a new thing or anything. A lot of the named anglers had already been there or were still about, but the respect of moving on when you caught one of them big uns, you respect it, 'cause some people are giving up a lot of their life to travel the country to catch them fish, and there's no point sitting on there to catch one of the smaller ones. You went there to catch basil, say, so you move on when you get it and you leave it to someone else, and Pads Lake was a bit like that as well. You catch jumbo, you move on. So
it wasn't, like I said, just if you had one, but it was just all about, for you on there, was really jumbo and anyone else would come along. But basically that would be another red card for you.
Yeah,
which
red card. And this was like the final big fish watery 80 really for me. So it was like one bite could change things for me. How long it was going to take, I didn't know.
So let's talk a little bit about the lake, your approach, because obviously you've got a lot of pads in there. So did you up your tackle end a little bit and gun up a little bit for getting in pads and whatnot? Or was there weed in there, or was it just mainly the pads?
Well, I mentioned it's just really about the pads was the only danger. A lot of my focus wasn't around the pads, because at the time I was working full time, and being a weekend angler, there's very little chance of getting one of them swims around the pads when you rock up on a Friday night. So,
do you still bricklaying again now? Was it you still doing?
Well, I was odd carrying that at the time. I think I changed my job about midsummer that year, like after I'd moved on there and was doing landscape gardening. So same sort of thing really, sort of building work, working Monday to Friday, But the approach was, what did I change? Not a great deal really. When I'd caught Arthur out the Carp Lake and the other two in that sort of last session on their finale session, I caught them on like wafter hook baits over a lot of ground bait and stuff like that, like bits and pieces and boilies, the whole lot, kitchen sink job. I sort of, in my own mind, thought from what I knew about the Pads Lake that jumbo was one of them fish that fed very cautiously, and Terry had been on there all winter and he'd caught, I think he'd caught 3 of the 4 fish in there, like through the winter, off a gravel lump up the point end, and all of those fish he'd caught were on like pop-ups, and he hadn't caught the big one like jumbo like up till that point. So I was thinking maybe that fish feeds a bit like half-tail, so I wafted to probably trip it up. So I had that in the back of my mind, how I caught the last few fish out of the Carp Lake. That was going to be my approach. Tackle wise, I think I mentioned the last time I just started using lead core on an North Lake to cope with the snags and the bars and that. So I'd got me confidence. Basil was like the first big fish I'd had on lead core, so I was into that at the time. I wasn't going to go back to nylon rig, helicopter rig straight through like I had done on the Carp Lake. I had confidence in lead core to pin it down. Yeah. A few of the other lads were fishing like that. I think Jeff Pink and Alan Cooper, like Cooper Man, they were using nylon helicopter rigs with putty along it, and that they were still on there. So it was one of them. If they had caught it before me, when I got on there, I might have to look at that again. But I'll stick to my confidence. Terry was using lead core sort of set up, and he was catching them. So taking note of all this, I was sort of working out the plan, but it's tough going. There's 4 fish in a lake with 2 big sets of lily pads, and they just don't show. So keep your wits about you. I don't know, I had this thing in my head with the 80 carp, that strain. They always seem to have flattened bottoms to their tails, or withered pecks and pelvic fins and that, and I always thought, because of the line bites you got at 80,
bottom dwellers,
they drag their bellies and fins along the bottom trying to detect slack lines and stuff. So I had that in mind. Thought about back leads, as I got into it, I used back leads, even putting 4 back leads on at a time, but that just knocks your indication to pieces. Wasn't a good one. Tackle and end game wise though, I pretty much stuck to what I you knew what had me confidence in. It was strong. It had landed me the other big fish on the complex. It was a case of crack on with that. But I learnt a bit on there. Pad Lake might have been the smallest lake over that side of the road, but it's probably to this date, probably one of the hardest lakes I've ever fished.
Same with sort of a lot of small waters, you know, they see a lot of pressure. So when you was on there, who was you, not say up against, but what competition in terms of other anglers did you have on there? Was it busy on there, like Scale?
Lewis Reed was on there, he'd been on there a while.
Yeah.
The lake had seen a few good anglers on and off. Jeff Pink was fishing it. He'd been on there quite hard for about a year. Mentioned Alan Cooper earlier on. At the time of coming off the North Lake onto the Pad Lake, Terry was on there, and he was, you know, he'd gone through the stock sort of thing.
And he fished in the winter, didn't he?
Yeah, and you know, you're talking the end of April when I caught Basil. He literally packed up from the North Lake straight onto there. Pole position was empty, so I dropped in there for. I only did a night really. Rob Maiden was behind me on the island, swim on the Carp Lake. Just had a sort of social with him, really. I wasn't fishing, you know, a few beers and all that lot, you know. But Terry was still full on at it on there, you know. It's one of my best mates, so I thought this could be awkward. Although we're good mates, we rarely fish together, you know. We had fished a bit on the Carp Lake, but it's better if we're not on the same lake together. And he was firmly installed on the point, so that was out of etiquette, out of bounds to me. You know, you don't do that to your mate. Right. But strangely enough, he caught it a couple of days later, which was a big relief.
The red
39 something, he caught it under £40. Not that matters. He'd caught the big, and Terry was gone. That's a big relief for me because your mate's out of the way. I think he went back onto the Carp Lake, but that was it. It was freed up. You know, I can start looking at down that end of the lake myself then as well, because although the fish appeared to spend a bit of time in the pads, they also, when you looked into the history of it, Jumbo, the big one, did seem to like getting caught down that bottom end. You know, you can start going through the history of it, like Richie McDonald and, you know, like Terry's recent capture, Dave Mallin, you know, the list goes on. That, I don't know, maybe Jumbo likes to rest up in the pads, but when he goes feeding, he gets out his comfort zone
and came out to
I've seen it on a lot of other waters, you know, like I think a Carp Lake scenario, say the Big Orange, like the gate swim snag, but really got caught from there. I mean, he's come out of the open water, so, you know, they sort of leave their little sanctuary where everyone's always watching them and trying to outwit them, and then they get caught out in the open. And so I had all this going on in my mind and trying to work it out, but it weren't as easy as I thought. I think, you know, we're talking, I went on there end of April.
After you'd had
Basil out. Yeah, and just fishing weekends, the odd extra day tagged onto weekends. I even did the odd sort of overnighter, but I think in all that time, the only time I actually see carp close up and personal was Jumbo just appeared in the margins of pole position on an evening, which is
next
top right there. Yeah. So I did an overnighter for that. I think I see it once walking around one evening. My friend Northern John was fishing between the pads, and I climbed the tree up, and it was just bobbing about on the edge of the pads. Other than that, you just didn't see them. I learned
to elusive carp on there.
Yeah, elusive carp. And back in them days, not everyone had sounder boxes with their alarms, so this was like a little edge to, you know, train myself to listen to. Used to work out what bite alarms everyone had, because, you know, we all had, some people had Delkim, some had Foxes, some had Neville's and all that lot, you know. It's only a little lake, not everyone had sounder box, very rare for some. I think Jeff Pink was probably the only one who had a remote box. I think he had a set of Foxes, and we had some fun with that.
Was that the wireless one or the one?
Yeah, wireless, but he, I
XRs,
think he turned up and he was showing us all at once, and, you know, sort of going off on a bit of a subject here. I think he went down to use the Portaloo whilst we sat watching his rods, but he had his remote box in his pocket, so we give him 5 minutes, pulled his line. I think someone was, you know, tried to video it or see him busting out the, you know, just he pranks just to while away the boredom, you know. But it was, where are these fish? They don't seem to jump, they don't seem to roll, they don't show much. Where are they? And we worked out that the only way to try and find out where they were was listening to each other's line bites.
Right.
So you worked out that he's got Neville's, he's got Foxes, he's got Delkims, and you think that's a carp line. But there's a lot of bream in there as well, so you get all the twitchy, silly bite, bleeps all the time. But the carp liners were they're almost like takes, and then they'd stop, and then you'd almost get a run of bleeps. It'd hold for a few seconds, and then it'd drop down slowly, because you're fishing slack line. The further along the line, obviously, there's more drag for the bobbin to pull it back down. So. Yeah, that was an edge, trying to work out where they were around the lake by listening to other people's line bites at certain times of the night. And you're sort of computing all this in your head, trying to build the plan up, and it did appear that they seemed to quite often go up the other end of the night time. So I started really hatching a plan. I think my first chance at catching fish came from a big plan I hatched all summer, right? And that was sort of the end of August.
So you've done a fair amount of time on
Yeah,
there for a bite.
almost 5 months I think without a bite on there.
Okay.
To the point of it's hard hunting something that you can't see.
Bit of an
That's what
eye
it felt like. Bit like the army have with the Taliban, I suppose. You know, you've got an enemy you can't see, sort of thing. You know, or rarely ever see. So, but yeah, there was lots of things being tried: mass baiting with boilies, mass baiting with pellets. You know, it was good anglers. You know, they're all trying to outwit these tricky old carp, and I just thought back to the Carp Lake, and I thought that area Terry fished with hinge rigs, a little hump down off the point.
Off the point there, yeah.
And he took 2 of the fish, 3 of the 4 off of that spot, but he didn't catch jumbo off it. He did catch it off the point, but he caught it across the mouth of Greavehead Bay, and he caught it on a bottom bait.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was taken into account, that he'd caught other fish off that point, but he didn't catch big, and so there's a chance that it fed on him. But because he was using pop-ups, he didn't outwit it. So that was my plan. I was going to bait that up.
So I think we got a picture on the next slide actually of the. So this is your bait approach.
Yeah, this is the start of a plan that I actually. I had a couple of weeks off at the back end of August, right, and this was a big push. Like, plan been put into place in my head, sort of working it all out, and it was going to be, as you can see there, a kitchen sink job. Yeah, you know,
barrel load.
There's a chap called Ian, the baker. He used to bring us breadcrumb and bread and stuff, and he worked in the bakers, obviously, due to his nickname. But like sacks of breadcrumb off the slicing machines, granary that they put in the granary loaves and all that. Like easy, literally pouring it into cool boxes, hot water on it. It's just preparation, like. And my plan was to do this session, but at the start of the session, I'd set up between the pads, create as much noise as I possibly could, let the carp know that we was about and fishing from around the pads. But once I'd set up in there, I was going to go down and bait the bejesus out of that hump. There, Terry had taken them other 3 fish off, leave it for a couple of days, and then move down there and finish my session like 10 or 12 nights or whatever it was, just going to sit there, you know. And I'll put that into action, right? And I think it was the second morning I woke up and I was going to move down to the point, and someone turned up, set up in there. I was like, gutted. I can't remember who the angler is. I probably wrote about it in the book, but yeah, he set up, and unbeknown to him what my plan was, you sort of like had it in my head. So I ended up having to sit between the pads for a couple more days, and Jeff Pink turned up. He had the same week off. And it's all a bit like, oh, you slippery bugger, like, you didn't tell me, you know, you're good mates and that, but that's what you did back then and stuff. But Jeff was keen on getting in pole position. He's quite happy that I hadn't gone in there, you know. Oh yeah, cheers for, you know, fair enough. I know Jeff loved the swim, he'd put a lot of time into it, and I didn't really fancy sitting on what I call the centre path of the 80 anyway, and get, you know, like constant people when you swim, people coming past. Now I had me focus up the other end because of what I'd learnt with the line bites and everything else. So that was the plan. And yeah, I had to wait a couple more days, but a bit more party in between the pads, you know, go on, off you go, get out of there, sort of thing. Get down to where I baited up.
Scare them out.
And I think it was the chap who said he'd set up there for a couple of days. I think he went early. He went in the afternoon, and so the point was sort of empty. I wrapped all my gear up and thought, right, first thing in the morning I'm getting in there. So I did that, went down there, put another bit of bait out, sort of similar to what we were looking at here, a couple of bucket loads of ground
Let's just
bait.
go through this quickly as well with your bait you've got here, because I see the ground bait balls there. You used that on Carp Lake, didn't you? Because you had them northern chaps come down. So that's something you put into your armoury. So let's just run through what you've got here in your buckets. You've got the ground bait balls there, like I say.
Ground bait balls, boilies, hemp, granary seed, what I mentioned. There'll be maples, be crushed up boilies, the whole lot. I mean, again, like I said about the Carp Lake thing, the balls of ground bait, you know, I think there was a few spots about back then, but there certainly weren't the you know, the
Spons
you
and all
know,
that.
there wasn't that. So basically, the Bull's ground bait was just a very good way of catapulting a lot of bait out fast. You know, mass baiting. Bear in mind, I said there's a lot of bream in there. I'm thinking about I'm trying to feed all these off, but also trying to invite everything to the party. You know, I wanted to swim rocking every fish in the lake feeding.
Loads of smell down there,
yeah.
loads of activity you're feeding and whatnot.
But yeah, that's what's in them buckets. So basically, it was, other than the boilies, everything else was just balled up and, you know, fired out. Boilies could be catapulted a distance, so that didn't matter, you know. Right. But yeah, that's I was twitchy while matey was on the point, but when he left and I knew I could get in there the next morning, I moved around there. You know, obviously didn't tell anyone my plan, and then that's where I was the next day, and I sort of fished my session out, and it was like seems a very boring way of fishing and camping, fishing a 4-acre lake with 4 carp in it and hoping the big plan works.
Not a bait and wait sort of thing. Almost,
bait and wait, and each day you get up and you put a cool box full of particles on, and you know, it's like all in preparation for the next day, and then you're balling it all up, because them tension, bream and that, they're wiping you out all the time. You're getting a lot of bites off them all the time and that. And you're watching the clock tick. You know, you're on holiday. You're going back to work in a week's time on the Monday morning, and you're thinking it's Wednesday and then it's Thursday, and it's, you know. I think the first hint of a carp finding me was on I think it was a Saturday morning. I had a 16-pound stocky.
And this is in August, was it?
Yeah, August, end of August, like. And it was nice to catch a carp. It was a stocky, and it's a bit like I mentioned about them Redmere Commons in the North Lake. They didn't really carry much merit at the time. It's like unhooked, put back.
But it's nice to know things were working at least.
Yeah, it's nice to hook a carp.
Yeah.
Right, and think, you know, the baiting pyramid, as it's called in the past, and that lot, you know, I caught tench, caught bream, and then I caught a carp. So, but I only had one night left. It's like, eek, going back to work, this plan ain't worked. But you're persistent, you know, put the rods out, baited him up accordingly again that night, and I remember, I don't know why, but I was sat there that evening thinking to myself, am I happy with all this? And I remember just sitting there, and this fish just come waddling down the margins, which was really rare, like about a couple of rod lengths out, and it went off into the bay, and then it rolled a couple of times, and it was jumbo. I could see the scales on the back of it, and I mean, the water's coloured, and it's quite, you couldn't see the whole fish, but you could tell this was him coming down, like. So I was like proper stoked up by this, you know. I'm thinking, like, close it's come, sort of thing. I just got to hope it, you know, it's been visiting the bait. It might have been there or something at the time, but I don't know why I got this little devil sat on my shoulder, thinking that rod on the hump weren't as good as what I wanted it, and I'd sort of started obsessing, a bit OCD. I thought, I can do that better, I can cast that, but that fish is around, I don't want to spook it. But in the end I risked it, one cast got it out, and I was a lot happier, and sort of settled down for the night in the hope of catching it. And strangely enough, that night there was no bream or any other nuisance. The rods were out fishing all night, which is quite unusual. And yeah, good night's sleep last night of the session, and you know, it's like a hot August night. I think next morning I woke up and I was having a cup of tea, and that rod, very similar to what I said with the basil thing, right? But you know, this time it was a right hand rod. It just sort of gently pulled round. There was a bite, and the tip started bending, so you know, bent into it. And what I hooked just started kiting right, and there was some snags round to the right, and so you know, I was getting on top of it, winding quickly, and that. It's only, this little gravel hump was only about 30, 40 yards out, something like that. And as I sort of stopped it kiting and led it towards me up the margins, this fish just appeared on the surface, rolled over its jumbo, and I just slid it towards the net and netted it. Probably less than a minute. You know, like, you know, you act fast. It might seem a bit longer when you're in play of a fish, but yeah, it was pretty quick. And I can remember lifting the net around it, and it was that moment of dawning on me, that's the 80 over sort of thing. You know, I've got it. This is red card. It's like in the net, and something I've never done on the 80 with any of my big uns. I never shouted their name out. Yeah. And like, that was sort of dumb thing. People shout Basil or Ever or Chunky or
before the mobile phone thing.
Like, yeah. And you know, it'd echo around the venue in the sort of early morning. But yeah, the first time I ever done it, I shouted that jumbo out, and I had a big crack like seconds later, and I thought it was Jeff falling off his bed chair because he wanted that fish bad as well. Like, I don't know why you just get them thoughts in your head. And a couple of minutes later, my old mate Maggot, Stuart Moore, would come running up the path like all sweaty, and I'm like, "What's that? Have you got it? I said, "Yeah." That's what I shouted. And the crack was his rod snapping on the split lake. He had hooked catfish, and like sort of a bit of a moment and that. So, but yeah, he sort of like weighed the fish 38 ounces. It wasn't a 40-pounder, didn't matter.
No, but it was
the big one. It was job done. The plan worked on the last morning of a long session, and everything fell into place. As they say, all the planets aligned. A lot of hard work come together, right?
Well, a long blank as well, because what you've been used to.
A long blank. I'd sort of gone through all of the other Yateley lakes very fast. Or, got up the hang of them quickly.
Reasonably quickly,
the Pad Lake was... A lot of people, I think, disrespected the Pad Lake because it's small and it had big fish in it. I thought it'd be an easy 40 or whatever to catch, and it's not the case on them small lakes. Yeah. Small lakes can be harder than the biggest lakes, can't they? Yeah. So that was really strange.
We got a photo of her, I think, on the next slide. So, so this is, what swim is this?
That's looking off the point, just to the left of the point, across the mouth of Grebeshead Bay, where Jumbo swam into that evening. The opposite bank there's the sort of, I wouldn't say snaggy, it's tree line margins of the Split Lake bank.
Did a lot of undercut underneath them trees as well.
Yeah, it was a little bit. It's not a massively deep lake, so you got 4 or 5 foot of water straight off the shelf along that causeway. But it's near the scene of where I caught Jumbo from, really.
Nice, lovely looking. So we've got there she is.
There she is, Jumbo there. Lovely looking fish, isn't it?
So real
typical
old
Yateley strain. Yeah. Very similar to Arthur Tail and the Carp Lake, almost the same scale pattern. And my thoughts of how it fed, I caught it on a waft to bottom bait off the ump where Terry didn't catch it using pop-ups, so my thoughts on it and everything was all right about that, But
so that must have been quite rewarding as well, you've done something outside the box, and it's paid off.
You've got a lot of time on your hands to think on them hard lakes, so you're constantly you're having a laugh with your mates, like say with Jeff and all the people you meet at Yateley and that, but
you're still a serious
you're also serious. There's a lot of serious side about it. You're plotting and scheming and what have you. Even down to little tricks that I use today. Try and get your rods out for everyone else, and it's just. Yeah, I won't say too much. I'm going to give away all the edges. But
so anyway,
it all came together, and that
and that's the result.
The dawn of realisation is that could have been the end of Yateley, and at the moment of that picture taken, I think my mate Maggot, God rest his soul now, took that picture as we was walking off from letting the fish go. He almost sort of like that look in my face, a little bit sad there. Could that be it? Am I walking away from Yateley?
So this is it now. So the second fish, you've red carded yourself yet again. Been through tough times to get that fish, but it all worked out. Yeah. So in your mind is end of Yateley now.
That's what I was facing,
Yeah, so you and I know in between that you had some socials and whatnot. We'll look at some of the pictures in a minute. Yeah. You done a little French trip as well, didn't you?
Yeah, the after this, it's like we're talking end of August. You've got no forward plans because you don't know when that last moment's coming. And Yateley is such a great place. I'd only been over there just 3 years at this point. I've been right through the venue. Made a lot of good friends. There's good social scene over there and that. So I just carry on really. But I had a little dabble on the Split Lake. Had a few fish out of there called Ghosty. I think we got a picture of that as well somewhere there. The good thing about the Split Lake, it was next to the Pads Lake, next to the car park and next to the north, so you could almost drop on there and back to back with one of your mates who's still chasing one of them other lakes. On one of them sessions, I think next slide the late Jeff Pink, with Chunky. He caught that while I was having a social with him. I was on the point on the Split Lake, he's in the curly. And that, funnily enough, the time and effort people used to put into getting their rods bang on the money, the spot within a spot on the car park lake, hundreds of casts sometimes to get that special drop and donk. I remember sitting there with Jeff, having a laugh, looking out into the dark on the car park, and his fish just kept repeatedly rolling, and he actually wound a rod in the dark, stuck a stringer on and cast at it. A couple of hours later, this mirror picked him up. I remember he come and woke me up. I've got a mirror, it's big and I don't know what one it is, and got up and went and sorted it out, and I think it's 37.10 seems to ring a bell, which was a good weight for chunky at the time. Yeah, obviously chunky. You know, stuck it in the sack for a couple of hours, photographed it at dawn, like, and yet another Yatey party begun. You know, but yeah, it's. I actually after this, I think I joined. You know, me and Jeff, representing Nash at the time, went and fished out a fish bill in France.
Yes, so it's your first French trip this was as well.
And that's, I think, run by Tim Paisley.
That's it,
I think we ended up looking after half a dozen people each. Yeah. There's a few funny stories about rowing baits out in the mist and bumping into Jeff off the other bank who's doing exactly the same, you know, cloak and dagger stuff, sort of. Yeah, it was a good week fishing. My first experience of that French fishing, mass baiting, casting distances and all that lot. It's never really been my thing since. I've been all sorts of different venues in France, but
see, I split them. I spent a lot of time abroad fishing, and I know a lot of people, maybe like yourself, that go and they can't split the two. You know, they come back, they may catch a big fish, then they go back to UK waters, and they can't. It ruins them a little bit, you know. Whereas I sort of just put a dividing line down. So either French fishing or is this UK fishing? I'm still.
I mean, every time I've been to France, I've caught, and you know, a couple of other European countries, but I've never done that well with big fish in France. I think I've only ever caught one fish over £40 in Europe, and I actually, in some ways, quite chuffed that I've caught bigger fish in the UK. And I don't know, am I more focused in England with fishing for big uns? When I go to France, it's more of a holiday for me.
Yeah, that's it. It is a holiday. You know,
don't take it serious. And them lakes, a bit like the Yatey lakes, they're pressured hard, aren't they? You've got like 1 week, there's one lot, and it's 24/7. Them fish out there are fished for. So you can frown upon it. You know, what happens in France stays in France and all that lot. But I think if I was to probably take it more serious, I'll probably be more successful. But whatever it is, that was an experience, and it's the first of quite a few trips, and I've still never done much better, you know, in France. But after that, I sort of come back to England, still with no big fish plans.
Yes, you got no really you're going to fish.
I carried on just. The thing at Yatey was Match Lake, it was a good winter water, so we all, all the lads off the big fish lakes like Jeff and that, we'd all line up along the Tri-Lakes bank and have fires and, you know, just
have good old
mass socials. It was a good laugh, good social aspect.
And interim too.
I think I got a picture of an old Yatey veteran, one of the seven as I called it, who caught all the big fish from the big fish side of the road. There's only 7 people who ever done that. And he caught, I think he caught that fish out the 48s while I was having a social with him in the winter. I remember it's pouring with rain, but I was sort of still humming and ahhing with what to do with myself. Like, you know, I've done all the big fish at Yatey. I was sat there, you know, with another Yatey veteran basically having a social on the Match Lake. You know, we was in a small group of people like Andy and Dave Mallin, Richie Mack and Jock Whites and that had caught all them big fish, but Andy was a little bit ahead of me, so he was just enjoying himself over the Match Lake and the cops, and I don't know, it just suddenly penny dropped. There's a £30 Scaley one in the Nursery Lake, and I'd caught fish of over £30 out of all the other lakes at Yatey, like the Match, the Cops, Carp, North and the Pad Lake, and I thought, well, there's a 30 in one of the lakes, Nursery Lake, there's a 30 in it, I'll have a go for it. And like the Pad Lake, very small family of fish in there. There was like 2 mirrors, both ex-Cops Lake fish, Scaley and the plate. I think there's a handful of commons and maybe a handful of these dink stockies that RMC had put in recently, you know. So I thought, that'd do me. I'll have a little campaign on there. And I changed my job again. I'd gone off the building work. I think I'd actually started working with my brother at a catering butcher's doing meat deliveries and that lot, and it was quite handy. It's local down in Hartley Whitney, so I used to nip into Yatey on the way home, little and often like trickle baiting spots. I think I chose 3 areas to bait. I baited a swim called the Crossroads, which was sort of behind the mats and the golf tees on the Match Lake.
Yeah. So just quickly for anyone either listening or watching, this is Nursery now.
Yeah, that's actually...
We can't actually do an overhead map shot of it because, like I say, so many spits and there's so much, you can't even see it from a map.
It is like a mangrove swamp. I think it was Nick Jones, an old Yanger. He did a lot of fishing on there. He caught Scaley quite a few times. He counted something like 100 odd islands or something in the lake. You know, it's only a 10-acre lake, loads of little dot islands.
Yeah.
It was just like a forgotten, overgrown lake with trees growing out of it. It's something out of that film Southern Comfort or something like that, you know. But there was very few carp in it. And yeah, this picture here is just a picture of the crossroads swim. There's like a post there stuck out straight in the middle there.
Yeah,
we used to call that a rubbing post. You used to knock about
So
when the fish were
around.
moving from the pads at one end, and they used to like dog leg through this, come towards you and head up the main channel along the Match Lake bank through a swim called the Bluebells and up to the inlet stream, which is where the water runs out of Sandhurst into the nursery and then into the river.
Okay. Yeah.
So this was one swim I was going to bait. This is behind the golf tees and that I mentioned earlier. I think I caught a 14-pound dink stocky out of this swim, pretty sure.
Pretty soon after you started fishing, really, or?
Yeah, I'm sure I did catch one out of there. And because it was a stocky and Yankee mentality of low merit, slipped it back. I think actually that night I caught it. Lewis caught jumbo out the Pads Lake.
Right.
You know, for £36 or something. It was going backwards. I think the bream population were, you know, the biomass had changed in the Pad Lake. You know, that was after my time anyway. I was on the nursery. I seem to remember someone going over and photographing it for Lewis anyway, and I caught this 14-pound stocky out of here. Yeah, the next swim I baited was one called the Bluebells, which is behind the sort of Royal Box on the Cops Lake. There's like a bottleneck. They had to come through this narrow channel, and there's a little gravel bar and some snags. It was boring as hell fishing that swim, but it's funny because you had them little games, didn't you? Like, and I had one was Tetris. I was pretty good at that because of my removals experience. I was good at stacking shapes quickly. Cane Tetris. But you're looking at, this is like a big bit of water to look at. This picture here, that the bluebell swim, the trees were like there. It's like
not channels.
It's like being in solitary confinement. But the Tetris game sort of saved me. And I remember at night going to sleep, and you could see all these shapes coming down in your vision.
Like when you've been watching a float all day when you've been fishing.
That's it. Yeah, you're watching float slip under. But yeah, I mean, I think I caught one out of the bluebell swim. I haven't got a picture of that. That one there. It's one of the old nursery fish. Might have come out of the Cops or something. It's one called the double dorsal common.
And what time of the year is this, sorry?
This is like early February.
Okay.
Right. Very shallow lake, so it reacts quite quickly to weather changes. So, but yeah, I managed to catch that out of that swim. So 2 of the 3 swims I was baiting, not on a regular basis, I'd caught fish out of, so it proves the fish were moving between them. Didn't want to overfish any one of them, sort of dotting about, but there was one swim, like I mentioned earlier, where the inlet was that run out of Sandhurst. I kept baiting that and baiting it, but I never fished it. I kept fishing the other 2 swims. Didn't do a lot of time. This was like a month-long campaign, like dropping in after work for odd nights or afternoons or whatever. I think I lost the plate once up the top end.
And was that the red card fish?
No, the plate wasn't. Scaley's the red card
the red
fish.
card
Plate
fish.
was the second biggest old Cops Lake mirror. Very friendly. It got caught quite a bit. I think Terry managed to catch it 3 times out of the nursery before he caught Scaley. But yeah, I had this inkling that Scaley would be up that top end. I think Terry had caught it up there. Nick Jones had caught it up that area a couple of times. I photographed it once for him. So I don't know why, but I kept wanting to leave the stream mouth alone, and I left it for a month and baited it nearly every day with just a handful of boilies. And I think one day I finished work, chap I worked for with my brother, he's a strange old boss. I don't want to talk anyone down, but sometimes you had a longer day than you should have had, so I had a bit of the hump and I wasn't sure whether I wanted to fish. The light was going and everything, but I thought, while I'm here I'll just walk up and throw a bit of bait in. Right? So I remember walking up to the stream end and there's just this wind trickling there, and you just get that
buzz,
instinct.
That feeling,
you think this looks the bollocks. I've got to go for it. And I remember sort of reviewing what I had. I think I had the water and tea bags, and I think I had a pot noodle and
enough for a night,
sort of a quick overnighter.
a quick short overnighter.
Being the end of February, I think it still comes under a long dark night.
It's a long dark night, yeah.
So yeah, I remember going for it, and I set the brolly up. I mean, we've got a picture here, I think, of a stream mouth, have we?
Let's have a little look.
But anyway, it's
right.
like dugout channel. It's not a pipe or anything.
Yeah, I see it in the books.
But we sort of remember getting the gear rounder and it's dark. By then I set the brolly up. Literally the stream's there, and I've set the brolly up, and because I'm having to use my lighter to melt floss on, around me pop-ups and all that lot, and get me rigs sorted. I remember propping the unhooking mat, because I'm going to be putting 2 rods in like that right under my feet where the water's running in, and all the time I'm fiddling doing this as the light's going. It didn't really matter because it wasn't going to be cast or anything. They'd go in any time. I remember I just kept sprinkling boilies in the stream, sort of thing, so they're washing
and flow
smell
through
out.
Naturally.
But yeah, I mean, I've got set up, and rods went in. I think I lit the Coleman up, and the typical Coleman that you haven't used for a few days, it's like that
the explosion.
Oh no! It's like just lit up the old bank, all that stealthiness, and all
Love
that
a Coleman
lot.
for that.
Yeah, I let them know I was there. And I remember thinking, that's done it. I shouldn't have done that.
It's gone too far.
I've done it. And then, I remember sitting there and drinking a cup of tea. I probably didn't even get 2 cups of tea in, and one of the rods was ripped off, and the battle from hell come from that. It absolutely went on and on and on. I just couldn't seem to land this fish. Every time I got it near the net, it'd go away from me, and that felt a good fish. And the other hair-raising part of this is the first time I'd ever hooked a fish on a hinge rig.
Okay.
And I wasn't a great lover of Drennan boilie hooks at the time, because, I mean, they're good hooks. Mates like Terry and that had done really well on them in the past, but everything I'd ever hooked on them I'd lost fish on, so I'm a bit nervous. But the hook shape and whatever seemed to fit the way you tied these hinge rigs up and that. So I'm playing a fish that's going, crazy on the end of the line in the snaggy area. You can't let it have a lot, and worrying about milk hold all the way through. But yeah, I managed to sort of bundle it in the net, got it out, see what it is, job done. Yeah, I got it. Scaley.
Red card already.
Right. We're end of February. I think it's the 1st of March or something like that. I'm like, Jesus, that's like, well, that all worked. Got the plan right. What a fish. Small twisted mouth on it and everything. I mean, I had to do it. I mean, I weighed it. 30 pound 2 ounces. How close was that? Sort of, and completed it. 30 out of each of the big fish lakes, the 80. Split Lake didn't have a 30 in at the time.
Right.
I think I did actually, after that, go and have a little dabble on the Split Lake after. I don't know, it was almost like a warm down period, like
the cool off period.
I've done it, it's like.
So really, in the space of no time, you've dropped on there, red carded yourself straight away on Nursery.
Well, we're talking that would be the early spring 97. That's it. The from midsummer to 93 to early spring 97. That's it, done. All the lakes.
So it must have been quite sad.
Very
Again,
sad.
this time it really hit you.
Hard to walk away from. I mean, local, it's always been local to me, and like a local lad to it. And you always have a lot of friends you met over there,
and that you've kept for years as well.
Yeah, you've still got some mates now. Still go out for Indians with them. Sadly, a couple of people I mentioned in this piece passed away in the last couple of years. And pictures we've seen on this, through the book, you sort of see friends that have gone now, and it's a sad thing, but. You meet a lot of good friends, and even after this, it's all done. You still find yourself when you're fishing elsewhere, popping in to see these mates who are sitting there, fishing rock hard waters.
You hold a lot of memories together, didn't you?
A lot of memories. I mean, I don't know. I haven't been over the lakes for quite a while. I think the last time I went over the North Lake side was probably 5 years ago. I think Martin Gardner allowed me to walk around, and it's nice to see what he's done to his complex. It's up to him. He bought it, and Match Lakeside, I haven't been over there for 3 or 4 years. It moves on, doesn't it? I hear stories, clubs or different people have bought it. They've butchered it, deforested it, put their own little touch to it, or whatever.
It's not the same as when you fished it, really. It's just...
I get asked whether I'd ever fish there again. No, I wouldn't.
No,
it's not that I'm anti. It's just that it's very special what it was and what it meant. Everything now's after. I think the Match Lake still holds a good handful of original fish. If people wanted to catch an original Yatey fish, there's still a chance
possible.
there. But
It'd be going back
sometimes, I don't know, I'm not a religious person, but it says in the Bible never to look back, doesn't it? And sometimes
you're going over old ground
things
again.
are best to be left as they were, special memories, and you move on, you know. And like I say, I've still got some good friends, and I still see them, fish the same lakes as them, and we sit there and we talk about the good old days.
Reminisce.
And maybe if I was to go over them lakes and look at them now and see all the certain climbing trees or whatever cut down or blown down and gone or whatever, or, you know, it's all changed, isn't it? It's best to leave it in the head as the memories that they were.
I think we've all done it. We joined a lake we fished years ago, and it's all right the first couple of sessions, but then you just think, you know, you're just going over old ground again.
Yeah,
you know,
things changed, don't they? It's time to move
the
on.
atmosphere's probably different over there. Maybe now for what you experienced, I suppose, and you know, you've been there and done it, and well, let's just be honest, red carded yourself on every bloody lake within a year. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last fish I ever caught from Yatey, we haven't got a picture of it here. I think Carpology magazine asked me to go and do a feature on the Match Lake, and I think I fished with Rob Bell, you know, one of the partners of it, and we dropped into the mangrove, and I put baits across to the mouth of the jungle, and I think we both caught carp, but one of the carp I caught, or the last carp I caught, was the orange leather, which was quite strange really, because that was the first Yatey carp I ever caught.
Wow. So it
was a repeat capture and doing a feature for a magazine, and I geared that feature around what I just said. If people still want the chance to catch a Yatey carp, there's still some in the Match Lake. But I remember actually thinking when I put that back, after all what went between them two captures of that fish,
what way to wind it up.
You know, it's like, that'll be my first and my last ever Yatey carp I'll catch, and that's it. It's like,
but how lucky was you to have had them experiences, though? I mean, you know, as an historic time at
mind blowing.
What a time! It was a mecca, wasn't it?
Yeah, we started this by saying how intimidated and everything you felt about going on the Yatey complex, and I don't know, it's like they're just carp in a lake, aren't they? And
yeah, but special. I
fished through the Blackwater Valley, and it's just another group of lakes in the Blackwater Valley which had some very special historic carp that people just love talking about, and there's a lot of good memories there, you know. I mean,
well, this series,
maybe my ghost will walk them banks one day, I don't know, you know,
we'll
like the ghosts of Redmere. Yeah, it could do. Might have to fire it over them in a rocket or something.
Put it in a we'll put it in a Coleman for you, don't we?
Put it in a Coleman, yeah.
But you know, that, I mean, it's a sad, because I'm sad coming to the end of the series now, because the Yatey's just been amazing set to talk about. But there are other lakes that we're going to do throughout your book.
Yeah.
But in between that, now we've sort of come into you want to call it something. It's been freezing cold of a night, but it's starting to warm up now, and we're going to try and get some on the bank stuff with you, approaches, use boilie properly, when to use it, and just general approaches on lakes. So for anyone watching these that have enjoyed them, we're going to go at a slightly different angle now. We're going to do some stuff with you, like I say, in session stuff. Yeah. But we are going to return to the book again, because there's some other historic captures in there.
Start putting the heating back on or something like that. It'd be something for people to watch at home.
Absolutely.
I suppose a lot of people are getting inquisitive and they want to know what methods to use at given times of year. So
I think
hopefully we can point them in the right direction.
Yeah, and you know, like I say, if anyone
my faults.
And I mean, over the last year, I think we've had such an influx of anglers, and they can learn a lot from people like yourself. So throughout, like I say, through the series now for a little while, we're gonna get you out fishing. We're gonna join you on the banks.
God.
And
are you going to bring Hovis a dog?
Hovis you'd come in, maybe. But look, thanks for coming in. I've got an appointment with a cake that Kate's made, so I'm going to go and eat that now. Yeah. And you'd like to join me.
That cake's Al's birthday cake.
Don't tell him about it. He doesn't know about it.
Right, okay. Go and eat it. If you just cut one half of it and turn it the other way, put it against the wall.
You just never know, mate. But look, thanks for coming in, mate.
All right.
Good to see you.
See you soon.
Take care. Ta-ra, mate. Bye. Yep.